Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm very happy to see so many of you. We are above 100 people connected right now. We expect more than 200 people to attend this webinar today and tomorrow. So we are very happy to see that clearly there seems to be a lot of expectation with this webinar. Yeah, times are complicated, as we know, but let's start with a little bit of fun. So here you can see our whole team here on the screen. We are all connected, up and running, working from remote mostly, as many of you. And so we are very happy to welcome you to this seminar, and we are really here to to make some presentation, but to also to have a lot of exchange of experience and really have some practical tips on the implementation on your project, and try to clear questions and see how best practice could be shared between all of you. Maybe first of all, a little bit of rule of the games. As it is a webinar, it has a lot of advantages. No traveling. I've seen already comments about the carbon footprint. Indeed, we spared a lot of CO2 emission. We're very happy about that. So, but of course, there are some little constraints, because attending from remote with more than 100 people, it is necessary. So the session are recorded, as we do it usually, also because we would like to share material on our website after the session. So then the microphone is switched off by default, and the camera. Maybe the best is that participant could switch off the camera in order not to wait too much in the bandwidth of the connection. That could be easier, and also because then you can see easier the speaker. Also, to see with a better ease the speaker, you can go to the menu in the view session, and also click view active speaker only, so that you can only see the speaker. If you do have VPN connection, then we would recommend you to switch it off, because it takes a little bit of internet connection, so it could be a little bit of a problematic for the quality of the connection. And any background application as well would be better to turn them off. So we would like, however, to have, even though you cannot speak freely without any constraints, technical constraints, we want to have as much as interactive session as we can. So you can intervene by chat, and you can send to content-related question during the session to conference room 4. It will be Lynn managing and moderating the session. Lynn Manser, our project officer. Most of you probably know her, and so she will moderate the chat in terms of content, and then try to answer you either bilaterally or more during the plenary or during the session with the speaker, so that everybody can listen to the reply. We might not be able to answer to all of the questions, either because there are many, or because in some cases are very technical, but we want to answer to all by a certain time, meaning that after the sessions, after this webinar, we would like to send a Q&A document, so that we collect questions, and also in case you do not, in case of question that we will not be able to answer during this session, you will have the written answer. If you have technical issues with hearing, and eventually with the video or any other technical related question, please do address via the chat to Sergi Batlier, our IT officer, B-A-T-L-L-E. His name Sergi. So you can type in the participant list and you can find in for the chat. You can click next to your name also to the pictogram where you see a hand. If you click there, it means that you raise your hand, and we can see that you have raised your hand. So then speaker knows it, and in case can come back to that. Yes, I see a question about whether the session will be recorded. Yes, as I said, will be recorded, and we will put it online as soon as possible. All right. And then last but not least, we want to interact via Slido application. Many of you are probably familiar with that. Slido is an easy to use tool to boost a sort of participation in this, especially in this virtual meeting, is very important. And what you can use in order to use Slido, it's enough to have your smartphone or a tablet or whatever other devices that you have next to your computer. In worst case, you can also use the very same laptop you are using or computer. You simply need to go to slido.com and then enter a code I'll show you later on. Okay, in this Slido application, you will have two main possibilities. One is to put your right questions, and also you will see the list of questions that everybody has raised, and you can also like the questions, vote for a certain question, meaning that if a question gets a lot of likes, it goes up in the hierarchy, let's say, of appreciation, and meaning that many people are interested to that answer. So we will prioritize the ones that have most of the likes. But as I said, we'll try to answer to all of the question, if not possible during the session, at least in written form. And then the second way to interact via Slido is to use polls. We will do some funny ones and other more content-related polls. It's really to have a real-time feedback from you, because online it's not so easy to have everybody interacting, and we are many. Luckily, we are many, so it's a good way to see a little bit how things are going for everyone. And speaking about that, if you want to do a first test with Slido, you can take your phone, if you have a smartphone, but you can do it also via another device. You see the QR code, so it's enough to activate your camera and get your QR code there, and it will lead you directly to the Slido session of this seminar. You have to, if you go online, you have to, when you click slido.com, then you have to enter the code ORT1, as you see in the slide. So maybe we can first start with a couple of sessions to understand people around. We have seen some chats from people from UK, people from the Netherlands, Belgium, France. So we would like to see how many of you are and where are you from? Where are you connected from? So you probably should be able to see in the polls the question: where are you joining today? Where are you joining? Where are you based from? And you will be able to, in a moment, to vote and choose your member state, so that we can see the answers. So we see how many people are from connected from UK, France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. I'll let you slowly get to the application. So you can always get to slide.com and then include the QR code. It seems to be a little bit of a technical problem with the website of Slido because the poll is not open yet. So we need to fix it. I see from my technical from the team working right there. Sorry about this little trouble, but we will get back to that. Otherwise, we can maybe see about that later on in the Slido. One is, what do you think? Now it works. I see people saying now it's working. So let's try it again. Working now. I see some. Yes. Can we go back? One is to the previous slide, or I can do that with a QR code so people can. Yes. Thank you. So you can again with your camera get your QR code and then vote so that we can see how many people are connected and from where. So probably by now all people should have been voted. I'm just checking chat. Yes, so you might see in your Slido. So the word cloud. We have a lot of people from Lille, but a lot also from Belgium. I see Ghent, Netherlands, Kortrijk, even Paris, Bruges, and then Mechelen. I see UK, of course. So yeah, all the 4 member states are there. Good representation. And go back to the QR code in case you lost it to go to the next question. Is charging. What is your role in the project? So that's the next poll. So I'll let you see. It should be charging very soon. Yes, project manager, finance manager, communication manager, or other. Let's see. So that will be important, of course, especially for the next session. So we see for the moment quite a lot of project managers, also finance manager. So 60% right now. People are still voting, of course. 20% finance managers, others 25. So it's growing and growing the amount of answers. We do have a lot of answer right now. Yeah, so a little bit more than half are project managers. There's a 16% finance managers. Then others, I suppose, in that case, it might be people having both roles. Communication manager as such a small minority, but I presume that among the project managers there are also people also working on communication as well. So yeah, a good representation. All right. So I think that with this little introduction, then we can go directly to the training program. So with 1 minute delay, I will in 30 seconds give the floor to the people that will be introducing session 1, APR, evidencing the project delivery. Then there will be a break. Then after the break of 15 minutes, we will have the communication and impact session 2 with a final small wrap up. For the day 2, you know, there are 2 sessions this morning and tomorrow. Same start, 9:15 technical start, 9:30 introduction. And then we have a session number 3, which is the first section of the second day, cost eligibility and claim submission. So here, as you have seen in the invitation, as you've picked up the preferred language, because there will be 3 sessions in English, in French, and in Dutch. Then we will go back to after a break, we will go back to only one plenary session. And we will have session 4, smooth project closure. So, and then again, a small wrap up. So again, if you have questions, some technical aspects, you have Sergi at your disposal and we have chat. If you have content-related questions, please do chat to Lynn, conference room 4. You see her on the screen. And we'll try to answer as much as possible. The structure of the session is really to have a first introduction, PowerPoint, and then work a lot with your question and answer, with your sharing of expertise and best practices, so that it's as interactive as and as practical as possible, and as tailored to your needs, because we are fairly advanced in the implementation of your project. So we wanted to avoid, you know, generic presentation on the basics, but we are there to answer to any kind of question in terms of content. So for the session to come now will be Julie and Vincent. You can see Julie and Vincent both are on the screen with the video on. I will switch off my video so that it is also the visibility of the speakers. And if I think you can unmute yourself, Julie. And I will switch off my video, and then you will, in a moment, be able to get the PowerPoint. So thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you, Gianluca. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. We hope you are all safe and well and comfortable at home. So I think maybe my colleagues are going to try to restart the PowerPoint presentation while I give a brief introduction. Welcome to session 1. This session is about the annual progress report. We're going to start kicking off annual progress report season. So it's on point. And it will be co-presented by myself, Julie, project officer at the Joint Secretariat, my colleague Vincent, also project officer. And as you know, you can ask all your questions to conference room 4, aka Lynn, also project officer at the JS. Our colleagues, Sergi, Juanes, Kathleen, are present also for technical support. So as Gianluca already explained, you can join us on Slido, and I think more than 100 of you are already there. But if you want to try again going to Slido, you just have to scan the QR code or go to the website and enter ORT1. Via Slido, as Gianluca said again, just to remind you briefly, you will be able to ask all your questions and vote on other people's questions. And the idea is that we will take all your questions at the end of the presentation, in addition to those that you may be asking via the chat, because we understand not all of you may be comfortable with Slido. And we have also, we really hope that it will work, this interactive way of being with you, because we have also foreseen some quizzes and some polls to make this session as lively as we can. We'll try to start again with a Slido, with a little poll to you. I'm trying to make the presentation move forward. Okay, there is apparently a bit of a delay in the presentation. Well, that's right. So on Slido, you probably see the question, what is your individual experience with APRs? We would like to know where you stand from with regard to APRs. So if you have no experience whatsoever, if you have never submitted an APR with this project, but maybe with other projects you have experience, or if you have already submitted an APR which has been approved by the JS on the first try. Or the last option is that you have already submitted APRs and some of them have been rejected before eventually being approved. So we'll just give you a little time to answer to this. Okay. We still do not see the results on the screen, but from what I can see, the majority of you, 39% at this stage, are about to submit their first APR and have no experience. Others have already submitted APRs which have been rejected, 29%, before being eventually approved. Some have been approved at first try. Congratulations to you. And other APR for other projects, that's a bit less of you. So thank you for answering to this. Hopefully the material from the presentation will be helpful for all of you, those that have experience and those that have not at all. And now we'll move to the other question. I mean, we all know that you're not supposed to ask questions that you don't really know the answer to, but we'll give it a shot with you. In one word, for those who have already submitted an APR, how would you best describe the process of drafting and submitting an APR? You can just be honest. I don't know if this poll is displaying on Slido. Yes, it is. So you can give us in one word what you would say. Okay, so the words that are appearing at the moment is difficult, which is the one that's at the very center of the screen. So apparently a lot of you find it difficult, complicated, challenging, bureaucratic, headache, okay, clear, okay, long, time, pénible, yes, so painful, okay, yeah, I guess this is what we expected from you, so it's okay. And thank you for being honest. We know that it's a very difficult process, and actually, unfortunately, with the previous question that we asked, the answer that we most expected was that people had APRs rejected before eventually being approved, and this is not, well, it's not because it's so complicated, but it's also because there are a lot of common mistakes in the APR, and we're going to try to solve this with you today and to tackle all the questions that you may have to make the process as easy as we can for your next APRs. So thank you again for participating to the Slido polls. I'm trying to move to the next slide. There. Okay, so the content that we have prepared for you today to try to make the process of submitting an APR more, let's say, not more of a joy or a pleasure, but less of a burden, let's say. It's first of all, why the APR, to give you a bit of background of the justification of why we ask you to do this in the first place. Then we'll go through some practical details, and we'll do that with a quiz that we have prepared for you. And then we'll get to the core of the presentation, how to write a good APR. So for this, we'll have a little bit of theory of things that you can anticipate and some groundwork that you can be doing to make sure that you are as well prepared as you can before even getting to the drafting of the APR. And then we'll share some good practices and some do's and don'ts from our experience of assessing your APRs and from good practices of projects, and we'll also give you some tools that can be helpful for you. Then we'll tackle the where to find help part, and we'll go to the Q&A via Slido and via the chat. So I will just give the floor now to Vincent, who will take you through the first part of the presentation.
Thank you, Julie, and good morning, everyone. So before we go into details of the APR, we think it's maybe good to take a step back and have a look at the global picture and explain the context in which your project fits into. So on the slide, you've got basically the whole strategy of the 2Cs program, and each project contributes to the program strategy for the 2Cs cooperation area. In order to measure the change that we want to make, the program has developed a series of indicators whether they are result indicators or output indicators within each of the program-specific objectives. And thanks to your outputs and your results, your project will feed these indicators and contribute to the program performance, which in and will hopefully induce a positive change in the area. So the idea behind the APR basically is not only to demonstrate that you have implemented the different project activities, but is also to capture the impact that your project will have at the end of its implementation and feeding it back to the program to understand and to measure this change. So this is why we think it's very important at the beginning of your project, or if you're in the middle of it or at the end, or completing your last APRs, maybe to ask yourselves these questions or key questions to establish solid methodologies to capture your results, to capture the target groups that you will be reaching and clarifying maybe your outputs. So in that respect, we move to the next slide. Why the APR? So the annual progress report is the only program tool to demonstrate the project performance, and that is to say, to show that you have delivered the outputs as planned in the application form, and the APR is the only way for the JS to validate that you have delivered these outputs, but also to show that you have spent the budget according to the financial forecast in the application form. And the APR consolidates the data from the different financial claims that you submit to us, and we use this data to calculate the financial performance of your project. Once your outputs have been validated in the APR, they will be made available and promoted on the program website in our output library, as you can see on the screen, for everybody, the general public or specialists to view, to download, and hopefully to use. So that's why, again, we will give you more advice on this, but we think it's very important to clarify the different outputs that you have in your application form and make sure you package them in a proper way. We will go into the technical details of submitting and drafting an APR, but instead of a presentation, we will do a short Slido with 3 questions. So I invite you to connect again on Slido. So this is the code ORT1 if you're connecting via the slido.com or the QR code that you can scan. And the first question is, So who has the admin rights to draft and submit an APR? Wait again, maybe, so that we can start the poll.
I can see we have 32, 39 users joining now. So thank you for joining. We have a bit of difficulties with the presentation, including Slido. It's supposed to be updating, but it's not. So we have to also join online ourselves the quiz to make sure that we know if you're participating. Sorry about that. We have 75 users connected at the moment.
Sorry, Julie, Vincent, I will just interfere for just 5 seconds. I think we have too much problems with Slido at the moment. I think there's some problems with the integration of Slido in PowerPoint. It is the very first test for us, and it is still a beta version, the Slido integration in PowerPoint. So I guess we will have already some feedback to move to Slido as well. So I think we will have to skip. I'm very sorry for this.
No problem. Okay, so this is basically what we wanted to do as a Slido with a series of questions on the practical details. Who, what, and when. So I'm sorry it would be less entertaining, but I will just go through the different questions. So who has to draft and submit the APR? So it's basically the lead partner is responsible for the drafting and the on-time submission of the APR, but this doesn't mean that the project partners do not contribute. On the contrary, the lead partner strongly relies on each individual project partner to submit a series of data relating to the implementation of the project. So it's a collective effort to submit the APR and to draft it. And we can only encourage you to agree between yourselves, between the lead partner and the project partners, for example, on the frequency of reporting or collection of data in order to maybe smooth the drafting process. What the annual progress report, as I mentioned, is a tool to report on the implementation of your activities, on the delivery of outputs, results, and target groups. And this covers a period from January until December. So in the APR that you will be submitting next year on the 31st of January 2021, we will ask you to report on the activities that ran from January-December 2020. The structure of the APR is basically based on the structure of the application form. So it takes the structure of work packages, activities, deliverables, the intervention logic, and in many sections of the APR, it's the APR takes a lot of information from the application form. So as I mentioned, the submission has to be by the 31st of January. The APR module is already opened on the EEP as of the 1st of November this year. And an important or two important facts, the January claims that you will be submitting next year have to be submitted before you actually submit the annual progress report. Because as I mentioned, the APR takes into account the financial data that you submit through the financial claims. And therefore, it has to be submitted first so that the APR, when you close it, takes the latest financial figures into account. And also, the project summary is kind of highlighted on the slide because it is probably the section in which we find most mistakes, and it's kind of the reason, the number one reason for APRs having to be reopened. So we don't reject the APR as such. We ask you to rework them again. So we reopen the APR and ask you to submit once you have our feedback. Moving on. So maybe Julie will now give you some tips on how to write a good APR.
Yes. I'm getting back to the presentation. Just maybe if I can go back. No. Yes, just right here, I just wanted to add a bit of something. If maybe some of you, especially the most recent project, you have some modifications in the pipeline that are to be submitted at the monitoring committee that will take place at the end of the week. So if you have some pending modifications, then it's probably better that you wait until your modification is decided on to open your APR, so that it will be based, as we said, it's based on the application form. So if a new version of your application form is approved, it's better that you wait until the modification is entered into the system, so that the APR template is adapted to the last version of your application form. So now we can move on to how to write a good APR. So here we really wanted to give you some ideas of what you can anticipate on. And by anticipating, it's still time at the moment. The APR is coming at the end of January, as you know, but it's still time to do this work and to make sure that you are fully ready to feed your APR with content. So on outputs and results first, the first one may seem a bit obvious, but clarifying the project outputs is really an important point that you may be doing with your partnership. What it means is that basically what is behind your output. And this is also in relation with the fact that you will need to reflect on the format of each output and how to package the evidence to prove delivery and achievement of the output. So what it means is, for example, when you deliver your output one, what is it? What does it correspond to? Is it a set of deliverables that have been previously delivered and that you can just package together and say, okay, this is the output? Is it a report? Does it include pictures? Maybe if it's an investment, if it's something tangible, is there something to show for it in a specific report? Or is it just a report describing the parameters and the characteristics of a technology, for example? So this is really a key question you need to ask yourself, because packaging the delivery of outputs will be very important for us to validate them, as we said previously, and also to promote them on our output library and to make sure that you make them accessible to other target groups and that you can roll out your project outputs. So they need to be, let's say, to stand by themselves. Then another key question is defining and collecting the baseline data for results, because there is no measurable change without baseline data. So you need to know where you start from in order to be able to show how you have progressed at the end of the project. So this is again key. Then establishing a methodology of measurement for your result. This is also very important, and it will depend. We have no, let's say, there is no one methodology for all outputs and all projects. It really depends on the type of result that you have. And as long as the methodology is sound and it's robust and it makes sense, then of course we will accept this. So the methodology may depend on the type of project that you have and the type of results that you're looking for. For example, if you want to increase the capacity of some target groups to do something, then perhaps you want to survey them at the beginning of the project to make sure you know how they feel about their own capacity at the beginning of the project, and then have a comparative survey at the end to understand the increase in capacity that they may have had. If it's a technology then that you want to improve the performance of, then perhaps you can have some tests at the beginning of the project or a state of the art, and then test during the project to and at the end to measure the increase in performance of the technology. And so also what will be important is that you identify the documents or the deliverables that the results will stem from. Some projects have already foreseen as specific deliverables in their work plan an evaluation study, for example, but some have not. This is not a problem. It's okay if you have not foreseen them as specific deliverables, but it will be important that you refer to some key documents where the results will be compiled and where they will be extracted from. And we'll show you actually a tool at the end of this presentation of how you can perhaps do this. So about, again, the good practices and the groundwork, there is also the target groups question, which is key. So it's very important at the beginning of the project or anytime during implementation when you feel like it can be an issue, and it has happened with some projects a year and a half into implementation that they ask these questions to themselves, but it's always better late than never. It's important to review the types of target groups in your application form and the target value that you have foreseen in with the partnership, so that, for example, you make sure that you're all on the same page about if the target value is 100, what does it mean? Is it 100 organizations? Is it 100 individual persons? So this is, first of all, a very important question. And then you have to make sure you know who is responsible for which share in reaching these target groups. Perhaps you have only one partner responsible for dissemination. Perhaps everybody is involved in the dissemination. Perhaps it's one per member state. It's really something that you need to make sure of at the beginning of the project, that everybody is aware of their responsibility in reaching the target groups. And then another very important question is that you know, and you all agree on when one value is to be considered as reached, because it can depend on a certain level of involvement that you will foresee to consider them reached, but you have to decide together which level of involvement from a given target group is acceptable to mark one as achieved. It can be very different, for example, for a network. For a network, if you have 2,000 as a target value, we can understand that you just decide to take the recipients of your newsletter as a way to measure this, because they will not be, let's say, involved in day-to-day contacts. But then if you are talking about maybe technology transfer to some of a specific technology to some organizations for the rollout and for upscaling the technology, well, then we may want to see, let's say, more business-to-business contacts and prospection actions that are directly involving the target group a bit more and making it more involved. So this is for the groundwork. And then I'll give the floor again to Vincent for the do's and don'ts, the first part.
Thank you, Julie. So now we will go into practical details of some of the section of the APR. I think today we will mainly focus or only focus on the project summary tab of the APR. There are other sections such as the work packages or the project finance or the project performance. We will cover them in some short tips at the end of the presentation, but because they are not the main source of mistakes, we did not think it was worth spending too much time on them. So we will only focus on the project summary tab of the APR. If you have a double screen, I can't remember if we said it at the beginning of the presentation, but if you have a double screen, it's maybe worth to open the APR on your EEP so that you can maybe have a better look of the different sections. The first section is so the highlights of the main achievements since the project starts. And the idea behind this is for you to give a quick overview of the project progress from the beginning of the project until the end of the year for which you're doing the APR. So we ask you to draft this progress in the style of a press release. So therefore, there are key rules that you should abide to. The first one is do not use the structures and references of the application form. Even the words, work packages, deliverables, the deliverable codes, etc., do not interest us that much in this section. So avoid using these. The style should be understandable by non-specialists. Don't be too technical. And some good tips. Explain how the cross-border cooperation helped the project partners reach these achievements. You can also include results that you've achieved, target groups that you reach. So include figures, for example, and on the screen. So we took the example of the Dwell project because we thought that they did it quite well. The style is really simple. They include some key steps that they reached in their implementation. They include results, target groups that they involved in the process. So I think to draft this section, you should maybe just think about how you would talk about the project and what you have done so far to members of your family. So although we do not necessarily reject or reopen APR if there are mistakes in this section or if it's not well drafted, we do believe it's an important section that you should not disregard, especially as this is something the program can then take and use for our communication, for our promotion, and put the light on what you've done in the project. Next slide. So this is quite of a short section, but this section is automatically filled in from the work packages tab and the information that you put in this type, and it can be a source of mistakes, and surely it is one of the reasons why the JS will ask you to redraft or reopen the APR and resubmit. If there is mistakes in, so the section is called Overview of Project Outputs Achievements, and it basically tells us when the different outputs are due, and if the project has achieved any of them. So do not mark an output as delivered if it is, or if it cannot be evidence, or if it is not finalized. If you can't prove that you've achieved an output, it is not, you should not write that you've achieved them. And if you think you can deliver an output in advance, we ask you to make sure that, of course, you can evidence this, but you can check with the JS before marking it as delivered. So I repeat, if there are mistakes in this section, the JS will surely ask you to review this.
Yes. Also, because we use this section to determine the performance in terms of output of your project. So if you state you have delivered and you have not, we cannot just simply cannot accept this. We cannot mark it as it's a mistake and it's okay. We have to reopen. Then we'll be moving on to the key section of your APR, which is the specific results section. So in the specific results section, what you have to do, you have some, the results from your application form, the specific results will be automatically filled in from your application form. And actually what you have to do is review the AF results, so those that you have foreseen, and assign them to the most relevant categories in the drop-down list. You have to select categories. You can see them now: environmental, knowledge, networking, socioeconomic, or other. And then depending on the category that you pick, you have another type that shows. And for example, for knowledge, it's increased skills and capacities, exchange of views and practices, technology transfer, and increased awareness. So it's really the starting point is the results you have foreseen in your application form. If the application form results are not specific, sometimes it can happen that application forms are approved and the results are not that specific or not that good yet, then it's quite difficult for you to report on something that's not specific. So we ask you to improve them already based on what you know from the implementation, and the categories can be very helpful for that. When we say think smart, what we mean is a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So these are the key, let's say, qualities for good results. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And then in this section, it's also very important that you know that even if no result is to be measured yet at this stage, for example, the output is not delivered, you have to explain the modality of measurement still. So next to the result type, the modality of measurement is a mandatory box that you have to complete. You have to say, how will you measure the results that will be stemming from this output? And then the box description of the measured result, this is something that can wait until the output is actually delivered. But the first box, modality of measurement, it must always be filled in because we ask you to anticipate on the answer to this question to make sure that you know from the start how you will measure your results, because as we said, we also need to compare most of the time the improvement of the situation. So it's really important that from the start you reflect on these. And then the don'ts about this section is don't submit your APR without filling in. Unfortunately, it's not. There's no warning from the system if you do that. But it's possible that you submit your APR without filling in this section at all, and it will just display the results from your application form. And as we said, this is the #1 reason for rejecting an APR, because you have to do this work. It's the key work from the APR. And you'll also have to know that once you have filled it in for your first APR, unfortunately, it will not be transferred automatically to APR #2. You will have to redo this every year and copy paste the specific results and the information that's in there. It's unfortunate, but and it's also a source of mistake that some projects think that they have done it right the first year and they thought it would be taken automatically the second year, but it's not. So please be careful with that. And then again, do not mix the modality of measurement with the measured result. Modality of measurement, it's really how will you be able to tell us that there has been a change. So will it be a survey? Will it be some tests? Is it a specific deliverable from your work plan that will give you the information? It's really how you will get the information. And also if you can give us the time frame, that's really good. For example, we'd have some midterm results at this point because the study will be released at this point. And then measured results, it's really figures. So it doesn't need to be a lot of text. You have 500 characters allowed, but it's not supposed to be that long. You just have to say this many percent, or this many organizations have been reached, or 80% of SMEs have been satisfied with our support. This is really, it can just be short, and it can be not applicable once if your output is not delivered yet. So to make it a bit clearer for you, I hope we'll go through an example of the PATH project. So this is what they submitted to us. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to read, but I'll take you through it. It's what they submitted to us for their first APR, and their output too is actually a suite of online resources to train healthcare professionals and employees to better recognize and handle perinatal mental health-related diseases. So their specific results in the application form were very good, very specific and measurable. So you can see that they plan to upskill 1,500 professionals, 100% increase in professionals' confidence to recognize the symptoms of the disease, 20% increase in timely diagnostic of the disease, and 320 employers trained to support women's return to work. So these were the results that they had foreseen. But in their first APR, when we received it, we were quite surprised because they had it came from a good intention from them. They wanted to report some immediate results that they had already obtained at a very short term, so not even a year after implementation. And so even though they had all these good specific results in their application form, they only reported on other and exchange and use of practices, and then they described what they were in the process of doing. So they were in the process of working together to prepare some evaluations, to obtain the data. So they wanted to report on some results. And so, as I said, it's a good intention from them, but this was not at all our expectation, actually. So what we did is that we worked with them to make sure that we start from the AF results, and this is what we obtained on the second run. So you can see now that there are 4 results that are selected: knowledge, increased skills and capacities, which is there twice, and then behavioral change in stakeholder to measure the increase in confidence, improved services to measure the more timely diagnosis of the disease, and then the increase in skills and capacities, it's to measure the fact that the professionals have been upskilled, as they said. So as you can see, it really matches 90% of the results that have been foreseen in the application form. And so that's the key part of the work that we ask. And the project has then said in the measured result, they have said the output has not been completed, so it cannot be measured yet, which is completely fine. So this is really, really what we expect, and they have defined a clear and specific methodology. And once you have done this in your first APR, of course, as we said, you have to copy and paste it from one year to another. But once this work is done for the first year of your project, it's really the biggest part of the work will be done. You'll just have to update and feed it with data if you have measurements that have been that are available. But otherwise, the key part of the work will just be done.
Thanks, Julie. So we will now go to the target group section of the annual progress report, which is another key section, and in which we find also mistakes. Once again, so in the application form, for each output that you created or you described, you also have listed the different target groups that are either interested in the output or eventually involved in its development. You also have provided a target value for this output, and sometimes you broke it down per target group. You also so you broke it down per target groups, and you describe how you will involve them in the development. All this information is taken again in the application form, as you can see on the top of this, at the top of the output description. So here we have the example of the PACE project. So their target groups were parents, so vulnerable families, and also childcare providers, staff social services, and employment services. They had a target value of 623, so that's information from the application form. And then we ask you two informations for this line: the value reached in previous reporting periods and the value reached in the current reporting period. So in the first box, so reached in the previous reporting period, we ask you to write the number cumulative from the beginning of the project, until the year before you're doing the APR. So we're in 2020. Your project started, for example, in 2017. In this box, you should write the value reached for the different target groups from 2017 until the end of 2019. And then the value reached in the current reporting period is the value that you reached between January and December this year. And then the APR will take these two values into account and calculate the target groups reached so far, so give you the percentage compared to the target value. And then below this, there are three different boxes. The first one is the breakdown of target groups reached in the current reporting period. And here we ask you to report on the numbers that you reached for the different target groups. So here in the example of PACE, they broke it down per, so they broke down the group parents, for example, depending on the skills that they gained or the relation to employment, but they also provided a breakdown per member states. And this can highlight quite useful information both for us and for you. You can, for example, from this breakdown, we can see whether the figures or the values reached reflect, for example, the balance in the partnership, whether the information or the method or the approach work best in one member state than another. So I think that's why we chose it as a good example. It's because of the information that it can highlight. Then the second box is the description of the target group involvement in the creation or the adoption of the output. And here again, we ask you to explain so how you approach the target groups and how you involve them in developing the different outputs. So was it via focus groups? Did you organize workshops with them? Did you organize regular feedback sessions? So there are many ways to involve them, and here is basically the box where you can say, this is how we did this. This is how we involved our target groups. And the third box is the supporting evidence of the reported figure. And here again, it's about providing supporting evidence, providing proofs that you've reached the value indicated above. So it can be an extract from if you send the newsletter to your target groups, it can be an extract from the number of people who opened the newsletter. It can be participation list if you have organized workshops to involve them. It can be an Excel table collating also information from all the different project partners. So again, there are plenty of ways to provide evidence for the value that you reached. I think we can move on. There are a couple of questions on the chat as well. I think one can be answered quite quickly. will all information that was previously added be lost if you open the changed APR? So no, if we ask you to redraft sections of the APR, the new version that will be created takes into account the information that you've already included. But as mentioned by Julie, from 1 year to the next, you'll have to restart the APR. So you'll, especially on some sections like the specific results, etc., there will be some copy paste, for example, to do from one section to the next. But within the same year, if we reopen the APR, you won't lose the information. And the other one is, can the JS automatically copy paste all content from previous APR into subsequent APRs? Unfortunately, we can't do this. At the JS, we don't have the rights to copy paste in your APR. We can't go into your APR and enter information. So it's really you have to do this, Lynn.
I have another question from the chat. So for projects that have submitted a major modification for approval by the monitoring committee later this week, the question is when the new template of the APR will be available. So based on the new approved version of the application form.
So as soon as we approve the modification, as soon as the modification is approved, we have to do a short technical action. And so once you receive the notification from the EEP that your application form has been approved, you can open the APR, and the APR will automatically take the latest information into account. So once you receive the notification from the EEP, it means that everything has been done at our level, and the new APR or the new application form is ready, and the APR will take this latest information into account.
And since the monitoring committee is at the end of this week, it's probably next week it will be, you will receive the notification for the modification.
And then I have another question regarding the target groups evidencing regarding physical meetings. It is easier to keep attendance sheets to register participants, but how would you suggest that we do this for online meetings?
Yes, so that was one question we had during the registrations, and especially in these times of working from home and lockdowns, etc. We think when you attend webinars like today, when you attend offline events, if you can do screenshots of the presentation that is made, for example, today, if I do a screenshot now, I can see we have 162 participants. I can see some of the names. So for us, screenshot is a good, a screenshot of the event, if you have all this information, is a good way to provide evidence that you attended, to provide evidence of how many people were there. You can also support this with the other documents that will be there. For example, the agenda. If you write a short report of the event, all this will be accepted. I know I've attended seminars in which I could not see the number of participants. If you ask the organizers maybe to confirm how many, because maybe they can see how many people connected. If you ask the organizers to confirm how many participants were there during the day, that's also one way to evidence this.
And I have one last question regarding the preparatory work to fill in the annual progress report. How can the lead partner ask for input from its project partners for the different sections? Is there a Word template available that can be circulated between the partners to feed into the lead partner version?
Well, at the JS, we had an Excel document that was really rough version of what the APR can be, and this Excel document needs a lot of needs a bit of tweaks and structuring, because we can't do one standard template for all projects because you've got different work packages, you've got different number of activities and deliverables. You don't have the same number of outputs and target groups. So we had the short templates, but it needed a lot of work on Excel from the lead partner and the project partners to adapt it to the project structure. I don't know, Julie, if there's an example later on in the presentation of such a template.
No, we don't have this. We know from the persons that participated when they subscribed and they gave us comments that some of you use monthly reports from the partners, but this is not something that we make mandatory. So it's really up to you to decide how you want to organize yourself so that you have more frequent reporting from the partners. We can send the Excel version of the APR to you with all the warnings that we have given to you about it. But yes, no. Otherwise, there's no tool that we will.
If there are projects that have a good Word template or an Excel template that they can share, they can shout either in the on the Slido or here on the chat, and if they are willing to make it available to the other project partners or to the other projects, then we will obviously welcome this initiative. But yeah, again, we can send the API. If you get in touch with your JS officers, they can send it to you. But just know you'll have to do a bit of tweaks on the Excel to adapt it to the format or the structure of your project. So we wanted to. I suggest we continue. We wanted to do a short Slido again. I don't know if it's going to work. So maybe we can see, otherwise we will treat just it seems to be working. So the first question was, when filling in the target group sections, so I should report the values from the previous reporting period and the value reached in the current reporting period. I should report the values from the previous reporting period and the cumulative achieved value, or I should only report on the value reached in the current reporting period. So the right answer was I should report values from the previous reporting period and the value reached in the current reporting period. Next question. So true or false, the specific results section of the API is automatically importing from one APR to another. So that was false. So the APR, from one APR to another, so from 1 year to another, the specific results section is not automatically filled in. And we know it's a shame, but that's how it is. What does SMART stand for? Sustainable, manageable, ambitious, realistic, and transferable. It's a small car. It's a synonym of intelligent or specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So it was the fourth answer, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So our output is not yet delivered in the section of the specific results, so I can leave out both boxes, modality of measurements and measured results. I must fill in the box modality of measurement, even if I don't have measured results yet, or I must fill in all sections. So the correct answer was the second one. So I must fill in the box modality of measurement, even if I don't have measured result yet. I don't know if there's another question.
No, there's not.
No. So unfortunately, I can't see who won.
No,
It's
we
not
can't.
me, obviously, but
but we could see that a majority of you had the right answer. So congratulations for that.
Just 3 seconds. Thank you for participating. And Steve has won the quiz. So congratulations to Steve.
Congratulations.
I'm able
It's
to
no real
see it
prize
on my
though,
monitor.
but well done.
We cannot guarantee an APR approved right away, but it's in the right going in the right direction.
Julie, you can take control again if you wish.
Yes, I will. I think I still have it. Okay. So now we'll move to the other tips for writing your APR quickly. So be specific. So this is really something that we can recommend, and be specific also in relation with the fact that you have some statuses in the APR that you have to select, and please pick the one that corresponds to the that best corresponds to the level of achievement and progress of your project. So you can have a look at them beforehand. It's a drop-down list, and so for example, if an activity is not supposed to have started and it has not started, you can just say not started or progressing as planned, but it's not behind schedule because it was not foreseen to have started yet. So it's okay, you're on track. Please be consistent also with the description of the progress that you are going to describe, because you have next to the deliverables and the delivery status, you have a little box to fill in. So it's important that you are consistent between the status that you choose and the explanation that you report. Also justify delays, because otherwise we will make some requests if we don't have the information of if you say it's behind schedule but you don't really explain why, then we're going to make requests to make sure that the delays are under control and to understand why they are related to. Provide evidence for each achieved deliverable and output delivered. So this is really something that you have to do. If something is marked as delivered, it means that we need to receive the evidence for it. If it has been provided in the previous APR, you can just say see previous APR. But if not, and if it was delayed in the previous APR, then we are going to ask you to provide it now. Also, something that's really important is to clearly organize the evidence with dedicated folders per work package and deliverables or outputs. And the best thing is that you label them as per their AF code or their title, because the evidence are not submitted with the APR on the EEP. They are to be sent to us next to the submission of the APR on the system, so via email and links for download. And the best thing that you can do is clarify them per work package, per deliverable, and then really label clearly and entitle the files very clearly so that we know what we are looking at and what we're supposed to check. Also, there's a box. There's a box that you can tick, which is has evidence, and sometimes you tick this box and you don't send evidence. But if you do, then please just send the evidence that go with it. Otherwise, we'll make some requests as well. If you want to show us the progress of a specific deliverable, or if it's delayed, for example, and you want to show us where it stands, then you can just send us some drafts. That's not an obligation, but if you just want us to see where you are, how you are progressing, these can be acceptable. And you have some iBubbles also in the EEP that provide guidance about what is expected in each given section, so please have a look at them. And finally, pre-checking with us is okay if you are in the middle of the writing of your APR and you're writing your specific results section and you want us to have a look. Just tell us, it's fine. We have some access to viewing your APR, so you don't even need to send us screenshots or a PDF version. You can just tell us, I just saved it for the last changes, so can you just please have a look and we can discuss this with you. That's much better to do it like this than to submit an APR that's not of good quality and then to have this whole round of requests and reopening it. Will save a lot of time if we have some pre-checks if you need them. Of course, we won't check the whole APR because assessing the APR is a time-consuming process for us as well, but the key sections, we can have a look at them. Yes, Lynn.
I have one question from the chat. Do we need to resubmit evidence that was sent for previous reports, or do we only add additional evidence?
For the evidence, it's additional evidence only. If we have received them previously, you can just say it was sent with the previous APR, and that's okay. Sometimes you can just also refer to the milestone if you have sent them with in a milestone. That's also something that you can do. I have to say it's clearer if we have them for the APR packaged all together and all at the same time. So this is the best way to do it. But for previously sent evidence, you don't need to send them again. We have saved them on our server, so we can access them as well. Then we can move on to the tools. We have some tools for you which are available on our website for download. So there's a benefit mapping of specific results of how to translate your application form results into APR results type and categories. This is just to help you. Basically, it shows you per specific objective all the choices that you have in the drop-down list per type of results. So it's nice that you have a look at this so that you know what you can pick from the start. And also, as I said, if your specific results are not very specific or you don't find them very good or helpful in your application form, it's also a good tool to find out what are the expected results for us per specific objective. For example, if you're a network, involvement of new types of partners, development of clusters. So you can see there's a tick if this is an expected result that will be available in the drop-down list for your specific objective. And so if it's not, then sometimes projects go beyond expectations. For example, for 1.1 project about framework conditions for innovation, you don't have access to the, I think it's triggered investment or cost savings. Cost savings is not available, but if you manage, for example, to have some cost savings, you can just choose the category other and then pick also from this list of result types. And then another example is from a project, from the SEND project. It's about how to collect and organize evidence for achieved results per output. So it looks a bit complicated, but it's actually quite simple. It takes from the application form the table that Vincent has explained to you previously. So the output indicator, the target, etc. So a lot of information that you have automatically in the APR. And then you can list the specific results from the application form. And then against each specific result that you have foreseen, you can put some deliverables that you have to reference these results. The types of deliverables that it corresponds to. This can be deliverables if you have foreseen them in your work plan, but it can also be external documents. And you can also mention how they are called, for example, survey number 2. And in the commentary box that you can see on the last column on the right, then here the project has just extracted the results that they have actually reported into the APR. So for example, again, 80% of companies are satisfied. This is in the survey in deliverable 1.1.4. So this is really helpful. And I just saw a question that popped up. These can be accessed on our website in the document section. And again, these are templates. These are a possible optional tool, but if you find that a column doesn't help you, then just remove it. It's just to help you. It's an inspiration. It's not mandatory at all to be used. And then a tool for monitoring target groups reached. So this is something that we developed at the JS. It's 1 tab per output, and it's the minimum evidence that we may be asking you about reaching target groups. So if you want to go further, then you can, but this is the minimum that we expect from you. You can have 1 tab per output, and you can fill in the reporting year so that from one year to another, you can also make sure that the cumulative number reported is correct. And you can, in the data of the Excel document, you can fill in the target groups category as they are in your application form so that you can just have a drop down afterwards. And then fill it in per name of organization and name of person if in terms of GDPR you can communicate it, or the position of the person just simply. And then any supporting evidence that may be relevant in case we have to request it. So now, next tool will be Vincent.
So here we have a good practice from the SPEED project on how to navigate through evidence. So it's an Excel table in which for each deliverable that is concerned in the APR, the project gives us the type of evidence that they will attach to it. So whether it's an Excel, whether it's a picture, whether it's a web link, and if necessary, the username and the password to access the website if it's not made public. In case the document is saved with a different code than the deliverable code, then the annex title or reference, and also a description on or comments on the document. So whether it's linked to the organization of an event, if it's a web link, then they give us the actual web link to it, and this helps the JS go through the different evidence that you give to support the APR. So yeah, we think it's a very good example for this, and do believe me, we receive sometimes a lot of evidence. So it's very useful to have this kind of tool. Next, I think there's one last tool, and that's the financial monitoring of your project. So it's a template that we made and that is available, in which you enter the information from your application form, so your partner's budget, the performance targets that you set in the application form, and then you can enter the figures from the claims that were certified, and that gives you the remaining budget, per partner at project level. It also helps the project to and especially lead partners to monitor the 20% flexibility rule. So as you enter figures from the claims in the remaining tab, if you get close to the 20% flexibility rule, or if you exceed it, some cells will be highlighted in red, etc. So it helps monitor this 20% flexibility rule, and it also gives you the performance review of your project, which is linked to one tab of the APR on which you have to comment on your performance and calculate it as well. So that was it for the... Yes, Lynn?
Yes, I have two more questions from the chat. The first one is related to the fact that there will be no corrective measures linked to the performance review in January 21. So does it mean that projects still have to submit their financial claim before they actually submit the annual progress report?
Well, yes, because it's better for the data, and we will make it for information. So it's in any way better to do it this way.
And it's not because we won't apply corrective measures that we won't take the financial performance. As Julie mentioned, it's for information only, but it does reflect something in the project. So we'll make use of this information.
And then the second one is about the registration of the target groups. Is it mandatory to have the name and position of the person, or is it sufficient to have the name of the organization?
Then, depending on what you have foreseen, if you foreseen to reach organizations, then it's the name of the organization is enough. Then to help you count them, if you only want to tick the box or to fill in one line with let's say a mark and not even a name, then you can to monitor the number of persons per organization that you may have reached. But we don't really need the data of the name of the persons, but just for you, to help you keep track of these, it's probably better if you fill them in some way, even anonymously, so that in the Excel document that we provided to you, it will add up. If you put just a cross for one person and then same organization and another cross, it will count too. But otherwise, we don't need the data ourselves at our level, and we understand that some privacy issues may apply.
So where to find help? So after all this, so we're coming to the end of our session. Some last help that you can find also on our website. We did another APR webinar on the 2C's YouTube channel, so you can see it as well. And Kathleen, who did the webinar, goes through each of the sections of the APR, so even the ones that we did not cover today. So it's a good video to watch, also to have all the information needed on the APR. There's a Q&A available as well from also an APR live sessions that we made, I think last year or a couple of years ago. So you have the questions that were asked during this session and our answers. Of course, us JS officers, but also territorial facilitators in your area are key contacts that you can get in touch with if you need help with the APR, if you need confirmation on information that you've included in the APR. I don't know if there's something else. So yeah, measurable results checklist. So after the sessions of today and tomorrow, we will send you the presentation, so you will have access to the links on the presentations. Juanes, correct me if I'm wrong, because I can see questions on where can we find the toolbox, where can we find the links to the recordings. I don't know if an email will be sent to all participants who registered with the materials and the presentations and the links to watch the webinars again. Yes, I don't know if you do a news as well on the website for, yes, okay, so everything will be, you will find it in some way, so don't worry about this. The specific results matrix, so that's the documents that usually presented a few slides before, the evidence register template. So these are all the tools that we just presented. So thanks. So I think we are a bit behind schedule. We were meant to have the break and start again at 11. I think we can maybe take 5 or 10 more minutes for questions that we have not answered. You can use, again, you can use Slido or you can use the chat. We are monitoring this.
Maybe while we wait for if there are some last questions. So many of the questions were about where we can find all these tools. So we will, as said by Juanes, or we will send around with an email afterwards. We will make a news. Will be all on the website. We will share also the PowerPoint. That should cover quite a few of the last question I see on the chat. And in case we have missed, as I said at the beginning, in case we have missed any of those questions because of timing, we will go back to that. In written form. Yes, Lynn.
I have one more question from the chat. The question is, for this year, the flexibility rule do not apply. What does this mean for the coming or next year? So I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding regarding the concept of the flexibility rule, but I'm sure that you understand the question.
Yes. So perhaps two answers. The first one on the performance review of 2021, so the one that will be calculated in January. It will be for information only, so it means that if you had a warning last year and this year we just tell you that you should have been underperforming again, we will not apply or ask the monitoring committee to apply any budget cut. So the cumulative aspect or of the two negative performance review will not play because this one is for information only. So it just means that in 2022, when we calculate the performance again, if you had a warning last year, it will matter at this time, but not in 2021. So let's say that the conclusion about that is that you shouldn't worry about your performance next year. So of course, try to make it as best as you can, but if not, you don't have to worry. And then the flexibility rule, this is what allows you to claim up to 20% more or less at a project level per work package, per partner budget, or per budget line. So this is something different. And if you want to exceed the flexibility rule, at some point in the life of your project, if you have exceeded it, the EEP will block when you submit some claims. So if you plan to exceed this rule, it means that you have to make a technical modification of your application form to make sure that the budgets are modified so that you're not blocked in the claiming process. But the flexibility rule and performance review, these are two different things.
And then I have one more relevant question. my project received a 6-month top-down COVID extension, and therefore the deadlines of the deliverables no longer correspond. How do I report on this in the annual progress report?
So that's okay. You can just explain that this deliverable is postponed by this number of months. It doesn't mean because you received 6 months as an extension that all your deliverables will be delayed by 6 months. If it is the case, then just write it. Otherwise, you can just say we received an extension and this deliverable has been delayed due to COVID by 4 months, let's say, and we expect it to be delivered in and whatever the date is. You can just report like that. There's no need for the automatic extensions. There was no need to modify the application form formally. This is what we tried to do to simplify things for you. So of course, it may not be that simple when you have to report against some deadlines that are now not very up to date, but you can just write it in the text of the APR. That's okay.
So I guess we can maybe resume this section, this session 1. I see also comments shared on good practices on timing and how to plan in advance. For example, Joseph comment. So yeah, please keep on sharing your expertise so people can get also information on how other projects are doing. That's also one of the purpose of this webinar. So maybe we can close this session, and again, if there are unanswered questions, we will come back to that also in written form. As we are slightly delayed in our schedule, we can have a break of 10 minutes, and we can come back at 11:11, if I can see from my screen there. So a 10 minutes break, just have a coffee, and then we come back to that with session 2 on communication. Thank you very much to Julie as well and Vincent for this first presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.